Welcome to episode 3 of Australian Muscle Chats 2. This episode is brought to you by Australian Muscle and Australian Muscle the Gym. Check us out online and on social media platforms. australianmuscle.com.au. We do free delivery of sports supplements and apparel around the country. This week I've got a really special guest I'm looking forward to chatting. It was one of the first people I had on my list to chat to, and that is many times South Australian bodybuilding champion, many time Australian bodybuilding champion, and many time world bodybuilding champion in the natural scene, and who I consider to really be one of the top natural bodybuilders in the world. Welcome, Ben Wortley.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thanks for having me. And
how was that for an intro?
Mate, that's a tough act to follow. I really appreciate the kind words and the offering of having me on your podcast. So I'm looking forward to having a good chat and hopefully providing the listeners with a few knowledge bombs and some behind the scenes sort of, I guess, info that they might not know about me as well. So thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
No, that's cool. Does that ever hit on you? Do you ever think and go, I'm one of the best bodybuilders in the world? What you've won multiple South Australian titles. You've won many of my shows in INBA and ISCN. You've won the world titles in WNBF. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. You've consistently placed high in every show or won every show you've done. You know, do you ever sit back and go, wow, I am one of the best bodybuilders in the world, you know, one of the best natural bodybuilders in the world?
I don't really, Kim, and I'm not saying that to try and portray any hero image or anything like that, but I think at the end of the day it also helps with keeping you hungry and keeping that drive there, as I try not to consider myself, like, as cliche as it may sound, each time I'm just trying to better myself and come in looking better again. And so I don't necessarily think and look back and I guess place myself in that higher caliber group. Like, I have had some really good success and I'm really happy with that, and I'm blessed I've been able to do this sport for as long as I have, but I don't necessarily sit back and think of it in a placing type perspective, as in ranking myself somewhere in the world.
I've always wondered that with not just bodybuilding, but you know, any sort of athlete who's at the top of their game, you know, do they sit back and go, wow, I'm one of the best? But I suppose if you do think that could even, you know, stop your drive.
I think definitely. Like, I think it was, it might have been Arnold Schwarzenegger, he said that when you're at the top of the mountain, it's also the most vulnerable position because you've got everyone else is hungry to come up and take you. And so I think it's good to have that underlying, I guess, passion and drive and eagerness to improve. And there's always, I think, no matter what sport, with the exception of, say, Usain Bolt and perhaps sprinting, but with any sport, generally, there is someone that's bigger and better or someone that has done more than you previously. So there is always, I think, a higher level and a higher caliber that you can aim for no matter how good you are.
That's right.
So I think it's good to have that in the back of your mind. And that's something I struggled with a lot in the earlier days, and I still do with my goal setting, was if I say my goal was, right, I want to win a state show, and then I knew 2 weeks later I was going to nationals, and then say I knew 3 weeks after that I'd have an international event. The problem would be I would almost no sooner walk off stage, and rather than actually taking the time to appreciate what I had achieved or accomplished, my mind was already on the next task. So I'd already had that next vision, I guess, in the back of my mind. And so sometimes I think you got to stop and smell the flowers a little bit, and that's something I've tried to work on, not only with bodybuilding but life in general, you know, on a day-to-day basis. That especially nowadays we are all, I think the whole population is more driven, and we are aiming for higher and higher performances and successes, be it, you know, relationships, business, training, sporting desires, whatever it might be. And so I think it's important to have those long-term goals, but also to be in the moment as well.
Yeah.
Enjoy the presence. Otherwise, it can flash before your eyes. And I've been guilty of that in the past, where I've got to the end of a competition, or a competition, I guess, season, and you've got these, you know, these half a dozen trophies there, and really you have to take a moment. And I always do it after my last comp, where I would sit down at home and look at them and just think, I would instantly think back to those sessions that I wanted to quit. you know, those cardios where your alarm's gone off at 5 a.m, 4 a.m, whatever it might have been. And I think they're the wins. They're the wins, and they're the moments you remember are the times that you wanted to chuck the towel in, or the times that you felt shit and you still had to train on that Friday night and it was a leg day or whatever it might be. They are still the things that probably stick out in my mind more distinctly than the moment of having your number announced as first place. So the trophies, I think they're almost a pleasant reminder of those moments that you didn't quit. Not necessarily the bells and whistles when you're on stage and, you know, you've reached, I guess, that goal that you've had, but more so in the moments that you were tempted to, I guess you pushed through adversity. I think that's what those trophies represent more so. Well, that's for me anyway, more so than actually, I guess, the title or the placing that you've received.
Yeah, look, I agree, and I think that line is being muddied a lot now with social media and everyone on social media, and I think they're training and competing for the wrong reasons. You know, just not necessarily training for a title, but they're training for likes and things like that. So talking about that a little bit, I noticed you're not massive on social media. You're not huge on social media. I notice even if I message you on Messenger, it can take you 2 or 3 days to get back to me, which I'm not going on about that, but just like some people are just full on social media. Every day putting up pictures and past photos of accomplishments and
throwbacks.
Throwback
Thursday, flashback Fridays. There's probably a terminology for it.
I follow you on social media, and the only thing I see you post pictures now and then is on Instagram, and you're at a party or nightclub.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad you've brought this up, Kim. Actually, I'm really glad, and I think this is where the industry's changed from when I first came into it, and I can almost say, like, back in my day, which was, you know, I think it was almost a golden era a little bit for natural bodybuilding, was around this sort of 07, 08, 2009, 2010. I mean, Facebook was around back then. I think it was used differently though.
It was used differently.
Friend requests, you know.
And keeping in
status
touch
updates
with friends overseas and things like that. Whereas the social media side of fitness is totally different now.
I think what I'll touch on first is the first part of that. You were saying how nowadays people perhaps competing for the wrong reasons, and I totally agree with that. And I think social media has worked wonders for our industry in terms of awareness and I guess getting messages out to, you know, people from all over the globe. But in the same sentence, that's its biggest downfall as well. And nowadays, like, I think you'll find there's a lot of, let's just call them Insta celebs, and that's by no means trying to degrade anyone, but these Insta celebs that they may have these followers, and be it tens of thousands or whatever it may be. And unfortunately, this can have a couple of negative effects. Like, those people often consider themselves, I guess, you know, almost on a little bit more of a pedestal than say,
I agree.
You know, someone that might have 5,000 followers, they're not as good as someone that might have 50,000 followers, despite their knowledge, despite, you know, whether one's done a uni degree or not, and even titles. There's hundreds and thousands of people out there in the world that have a lot more followers than me and spread a lot bigger message than I do, that may not have ever even competed before or stepped foot on a stage. And I'm a big one in, you know, practicing what you preach. And so there is this advantage that you can portray these messages and these, you know, these training guides and that sort of thing, and nutrition advice. But the problem is, Kim, I think, is that a lot of this is a lot based on image and perhaps not the most accurate or correct information. So then the masses are getting confused, you know.
I agree. Yes.
And especially, I think what's popular on social media is this whole if it fits your macros type lifestyle, because it seems glamorous. You know, you see the girl with the 500,000 followers she's a babe, she's got a great body, she's showing how flexible her dieting is and everything like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for encouraging flexibility and healthy relationships with food, but then it can, you know, unfortunately, I guess, give the wrong message to someone that's new and starting out. They could take that then to, you know, to another extreme and just eat all if it fits your macros.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's a whole nother can of worms. But I think in terms of like social media and how the sport's changed, and I think it can alter people's opinions on competing, and people can compete not necessarily to try and be the best versions of themselves, but I guess to try and become, Insta famous and to get that following, rather than, you and I both know competing, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. It's a hard journey. It takes a lot of willpower, dedication, sacrifice, the list goes on, but to really do well and excel in those dark moments, you've got to have a real underlying passion and a real heart to want to get up there for the right reasons.
That's right.
And if your reasons don't quite align with why you're doing it, or your love for the sport or pushing yourself, then those dark moments you're going to really struggle to get through, I think. And it can be a case of perhaps, maybe somebody seeing a friend do it on social media, or them being inspired by an iconic figure that, again, has this big following base. And in that way, if it's going to give someone motivation, and if they can look at someone on social media and see their abs or their arms, and if that can motivate them to train harder, hey, I think it's a good thing. But on the other end of the stick, especially I think females, and I really feel for the girls, is that they can see these girls popping up on their feed that have, these great abs and these awesome glutes, with their booty bands and whatever.
The trouble is, most of these girls have a stockpile of 5,000 photos of when they were in shape at their contest.
Exactly right. And social media is, at the end of the day, it's a highlight reel. It's a highlight reel of what we want to portray to people that our life is. Hey, we all have crap days, and there's all days where we feel down. But you and I, we're not going to upload a photo like that.
No.
And unfortunately, what can happen is these girls, they can be feeling down or have a bit of a rough day, and then they are comparing themselves to this hot, fitness babe that is obviously, like you said, it could be in an archive of photos, and so you're comparing your worst with someone else's best, and then I think it can really have some, some negative mental, side effects, social media, and it can put people in a lot of, under pressure and a constant comparison, and I guess feeling, maybe not as good as what they should, or in that regard, I think it can be a little bit dangerous nowadays. And unfortunately, a lot of us do compare ourselves,
That's right.
to others on there that are in their prime. So that's why, mate, my social media, it is something I should get onto more, and I think for myself personally, and maybe with a bit of self-branding, I think I should be uploading more regularly. But at the same time, I pride myself on being authentic. I pride myself on being real, and I'll tell someone how it is. Like, I love to travel. I love to have a good time. I will always train my ass off every single session. But hey, if it comes to letting my hair down, I also know the balance of life as well. And that's something that I've learned over time and over the years. I started out doing this when I was 17, and for many years initially, sort of 17, 18, 19, 20, even 21, I went on my first big overseas trip at 21, but those first few years, I was, that's when a lot of people are going through a big party phase, and they're going out, and everything's new and exciting, you're a fresh adult. Mate, all those years, I was eating out of a Tupperware container. I was training those Saturday nights, I've kind of lived a little bit of a reverse adulthood in a way, and I never burnt myself out by any means, but when it came time to my first shoulder reconstruction and I had training taken away from me, I felt a bit lost as a person, because it was all I'd ever known. That was my number one priority, and it made me reassess everything in life, because I'd realised once you put so much emphasis, I guess if you put all your eggs in one basket and that basket gets taken away, you really start to question, right, is that, wait, am I Ben the bodybuilder, or am I Ben Wortley? Like, there's got to be more to me than just training and this image of me getting on stage. And I realised that I could be putting more time into things like business, relationships, be it both social and family. And I started to go down the self-development path I started to read these books about, being a better person and just improving in life. Started listening to podcasts, and I guess it changed my perspective on what training is and what competing is for me. And now I'm the happiest I've ever been. I feel like my balance is so much better. I know that I can still have a good time when the time is right. I don't encourage by any means it being a quite regular thing. But hey, if you've got a birthday coming up, or there's a wedding, or there's a celebration, whatever it might be, if you're someone that likes to have a few drinks and have a good time, hey, you can go ahead and do that and still live a very healthy and sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the same goes with eating as well. I, for many years, thought that any chocolate would be, that would be the end of me. You know, even in off-season, I thought it was really, these foods get labelled as good and bad foods. Whereas now I'm more educated and knowledgeable, and you learn things more about macros and calories, and I now know, hey, if I'm going to enjoy myself and have a little bit of dessert one night, that I will just, for example, earlier in that day, I'll reduce my carbohydrate and fat intake a little bit. So
I do exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like over Easter, I had a few functions, and all I did was I just dropped a couple of meals even during the day, or made them very small, or reduced carbohydrates, but in the end reduced calories, because I knew, well, that later on tonight I'm going to have those calories to make everything up. You know?
And
I found that works so much better, you know, and you don't stress about it, you know.
And that word you just said then, Kim, stressed, I think that's one of the biggest things. People can get so worked up over these things, and this is where, unfortunately, these borderline eating disorders can occur, because people get so fearful and stressed over certain food groups that they feel if they even indulge a little, what can often happen is then they have that one piece of chocolate, and rather than just being a little bit sort of, I guess, aware of what they're doing for the rest of the day, or maybe increasing their cardio or whatever it might be, they think, right, well, I've had one piece now, I might as well do the whole block.
That's right.
And I think that's where it becomes this like kind of this certain mindset of that it's, if you sort of restrict yourself so much from it, that it's like once the door opens a little, it's like the floodgates are open. It's like, well, I've cracked a little bit now, I might as well go nuts.
That's right.
And I think that's when it becomes an unhealthy, you know, the sport can be labelled as a little bit unhealthy. And I don't agree by any means. It upsets me actually when people say, oh, bodybuilding can create eating disorders and this and that. And I don't think that's true at all. I think unawareness and a lack of education can create eating disorders.
That's right.
But when people brand and label our sport like that, and I'm sure it probably annoys you a little bit too.
Oh yeah,
that's where, and even when I'm dieting for a competition, the same old thing. Like, aren't you starving yourself right now? Aren't you sick of starving yourself?
Yeah.
What's going to be the first thing you're going to eat after comp? When are you going to start eating normal again? You know, and it's kind of like, well, okay, well, what is normal?
That's right.
You know, it's one of those cases that if I go out to
our normal's a lot different from somebody else's.
You know, if you order the salad off the menu instead of the schnitzel with the boys, instantly you're the one who gets stared at. And it's like,
that's right.
What are you eating? But if I order the schnitzel, you know, and with the chips and have the jug of beer and everything, no one would say a thing. So back to the whole social media thing, I like to keep my life real, and what you see is what you get. If, you know, I just said to you, I'm about to head off to America to a music festival, and I love that stuff, and I don't want to get to a stage in my life where I look back and see my 20s flash before my eyes. And like I said, the first 5 years or so of competing, I was so focused, and not that I'm not focused now, but I guess I sacrificed a lot and quite a lot from a social aspect. And now I've learnt the balance a lot better. I also went too far one end, where I went out a little too much, and I worked out that wasn't for me. You know, I had a year in 2016 when I had my second shoulder reconstruction. I thought, you know, I had like big plans that year to get back on stage, and then when I had the second recon, it kind of threw out my goals and what I'd set for that year. So I thought, right, I'm going to use this year to travel.
Yeah.
So I went to Bali, I did America, I then went to Europe, and then went back to America again, and it was one of the best years of my life. And there were a lot of drinks consumed, a lot of late nights, and don't get me wrong, I don't regret a thing, but I worked out pretty quick as well that isn't sustainable, and that isn't for me in the long run. You know, here and there a celebration is great, and I love to get out and have a dance and have a good time with my mates, but I also know when to reel it in. And that's why last year was a good year for me, where I was able to, I didn't head out for over 6 months getting back on stage, you know, and it really, I think the beauty of competing is, I guess it sort of filters the bullshit out in your life. You know, you work out your priorities pretty quick, and it really makes you aware of what's actually important and what isn't. You know, I think it simplifies life a little bit.
Yeah.
And so to compete again last year was amazing, and it was so good to be back up there again. So yeah, I think balance is important for everyone, and it's something that you should experience yourself. It's not necessarily a case of me telling you what's right or you telling someone what's right. Sometimes people have to figure it out themselves.
That's right. Everyone's got different levels.
Yep.
Touching back now, I want to talk about your injuries. Like you mentioned you had 2 shoulder reconstructions.
Mm-hmm.
Are they on the same shoulder or both shoulders or?
So different shoulders. I had my first one on my left shoulder in 2015. It was.
Motorcycle accident?
This one wasn't. This was actually from gym and just
right.
Overuse over the years, and so it was a torn labrum. My rotator cuff was not too bad, but a labral tear. My AC joint was a little bit messy, so he cleaned that up as well. So I had that done in May 2015. I also had a torn hernia, an umbilical hernia, which is basically in the belly button region.
I've had 2 of those.
Yeah, so I consider it like the 100,000k service on a car. So I've been training hard for a number of years, and I thought, right, I'm getting the shoulder done, I'm going to get the hernia done too. So I figured I was going to be out for training anyway, I might as well try and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Big mistake that was. So I had my shoulder done first, and then my hernia was a week later. Now, the shoulder wasn't actually too painful afterwards, but that hernia repair, trying to get in and out of bed with 1 arm and not use any of your ab muscles or core, like I look like a salmon.
How
like
painful is a hernia recovery?
It sucks. It basically.
I've had 2 of them, and you can feel a cough coming on, and you get terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you can go to the toilet and think, oh my god, I need to push.
Yeah.
It's just for the first 4 or 5 days, it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like mine was getting better. I honestly thought 2 weeks later, and it felt the same as the day after surgery, and then all of a sudden it was literally like 2 weeks and 1 day. I was like, oh wait, this is starting to go.
Yeah.
You can't even yawn. You can't even stretch back because it feels like you're gonna tear your abs. And the ironic thing about that is actually I did re-tear mine 6 months later, so it's back again. But so I had that shoulder done, had the hernia done. I had just been getting back into some heavy training, and my physique started coming back pretty quickly. Thank God for muscle memory, it is a thing.
Yep.
And anyway, I love my motocross, and I was out at Murray Bridge. They had a ride day out there, and I'd come through a fast section of the track, and there was actually a girl out on a bike, and it was a bit of a blind corner, and she had stopped. And I've come around gun-ho and seen her, and it was just too late. So I basically hit the back of her at probably like 70, and she was okay, but I went way over the top, somersaulting me and my bike, and landed like I cartwheeled, rolled along the ground, and I knew straight away. I stood up, I checked my knees, I checked my collarbones, they were right, but I could feel my right shoulder. It was like a corky getting footy.
Yeah.
It was like getting one of those, but in your upper trap. And I'd actually done my AC joint on a BMX back in year 11, so I knew the feeling. That was it was about a grade 2 back then, but this was a complete tear. I think it was like a 4 or whatever it might have been, and I felt the bones sitting up nice and high, and this was my other shoulder, and so I just thought, oh, you are kidding me, here we go again. So I rode my bike back into the pits, loaded up for the day, and
you still rode back?
Yeah, I rode back to the pits. And anyway, that afternoon I went and got the scans and everything. Yep, it was confirmed. It was grade 4 tear, and to be honest, that was at the Domain Adelaide, and nothing against those guys, but the doctor was pretty keen to get me in and out the office pretty quickly. So he just said, oh no, you'll be right. Start weights again a couple of weeks later and you'll be okay. And I could tell this thing. That was not a wise idea. So I went and got a second opinion. They said, right, you're gonna need surgery, and so I guess for the best possible outcome, you need it done within the next 3 weeks so that scar tissue doesn't form, and you'll have the best chance of, I guess, bouncing back. So I flew up to Brisbane again, the same surgeon. Bang, had that done. I've got now the screw in there with the artificial ligament holding it down. So that was that chapter. I then actually re-injured that shoulder last year on Australia Day after a few beers. We were playing footy, which seemed like a good idea. And I actually fractured what's called the coracoid process, where my AC joint was repaired, where the screw and ligament was, that held when I got tackled, but it caused a fracture in the bone underneath. So it's a really rare bone to fracture, but I guess it's a good sign that the surgeon did a good job of the repair.
Yeah, the shoulder held together.
That then got me out for another 7-8 weeks last year. So it's been a journey. Both shoulders still feel a little bit rusty, to be fair, and I don't think they will ever feel 100%, but you do what you can. And I always think on those days when I come in and everything's hurting, there's always someone worse off than me. You know, one of my best mates, unfortunately, is, you know, he's in a wheelchair, and he motivates me so much. That guy does not complain once. He is the most positive, happy, outgoing guy you will meet, and he does not complain once. So I think to myself, like, hey, yeah, I've got a few like beat up joints, but here I am, and I'm able to still come into the gym every single day. There's a lot of people that can't even train.
No.
So I think it's important to remind yourself of those little things, because we can get, I guess, caught up in our own thoughts, and you know, even the days when everything comes in, like you make your way into the gym and everything feels heavier, or you know, you're getting niggles, it can be frustrating. And don't get me wrong, I would love it if I was, you know, I remember the days when I was a teenage junior competitor, I wouldn't even warm up, and if I did, it'd be like a 2-minute jog on a treadmill. I'd then throw the plates on, I'd be going for maxes, and I'd be fine. I'd do that, then I'd go to footy training, and then I'd go home. You know, on the weekends I'd play a game of footy, I'd go to the gym, I'd then race motocross the next day, I'd crash my bike. I was like made of a rubber band. I wouldn't get sore at all. Now I warm up and cool down for almost as long as it takes me to do my session, and it's like I'm leaving with a walking frame. You know, I'm 28, but I feel 58. But I think that's part and parcel of the journey. You know. Very
good. So. You can still you can train shoulders normally now, or do you have to avoid certain things? Or
barbell bench press, that still does me in a bit. Like there's a really large clunk in my shoulder, and I've seen a few different physios and got a few different opinions. They're saying it's just scar tissue. So I mean, most movements I can do. Like I can do heavy weighted dips. There's some movements that seem like they would cause the shoulder a lot of trouble, which I get away with fine, but there's a couple of rear delt movements which is kind of a little bit unusual that can impinge it a little, but I make do with what I can, and I can get away with most movements now. I guess I have to be a little bit smarter and more aware. So a lot more warming up, and almost, I guess, getting that shoulder in a set position where it is more comfortable. So rotator cuff type work at the beginning, and then stretching is a big one at the end as well, which admittedly I don't do enough of, like most of us bodybuilders, but I still can get around the gym through most movements.
Well, you made your comeback. I mean, I suppose it was sort of a comeback after all those injuries last year, and you came into the ICN South Australian titles, and you won the overall, and were given an ICN Pro card, and you went to then the ICN Nationals for our first pro show. How sick was that show? Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. It was, I guess I'd been working at those seminars, not the seminars, at the expos in that exhibition theatre with the Arnolds and the Gentex stand for all those years. And they've always had the IFBB on them, the Arnolds, and I always thought, hey, it'd be really cool to compete at like an expo. Different sort of crowd, you know, you're probably getting a few more faces that aren't familiar with bodybuilding. That are perhaps just wandering through for a look, and to be able to do something like that, I thought it was great. Yeah, it was a great experience.
The crowd was nuts on that pro show night, but not only was that nuts, I thought the lineups were incredible, which was a real good testament that, you know, they were all worthy ICN pros on the stage. Getting back to the show though, it didn't sort of go your way. Like you had no placing in that show. Did that hurt? Like,
that was actually the first show.
I never got to talk to you too much on that night, you know? And I'll give you my perspective on the show. Like, you were the most conditioned athlete on the show. And they announced a third place, and they announced second place, and we all thought, shit, Ben's won this. And then
to be honest, mate, I thought I had too.
Yeah, I sort of thought, holy cow, Ben's going to win this. And then they announced Tim in first place, and you didn't even get a top 3. So it was a real shock to a lot of people. How did you feel? Like,
it was, I think the thing that was the most difficult thing for me to accept was that was the first ever show I haven't placed in. First ever one. I think I've done about I don't know the exact count. I think it's about 41, 42 now. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. And that's what's helped me get to where I am and the results I've achieved is I smash myself in the gym. I'm happy for anyone to come do a session with me and I try and really pride myself on, walking the walk and talking the talk. There's a lot of, back to this whole Instagram thing, there's a lot of people that put up this persona that how hard they're training and, how they will have this standard sort of selfie post or whatever with a motivational quote. I try and not worry too much about that stuff. I try and, there's a quote I like, it's, what is it? It's something about let this work hard in silence, let success make the noise.
Yeah.
And I try and really live my life by that quote on a daily basis. And I just get in, I get the work done, I diet my ass off. One thing I try and make sure is that I'm not outworked. So then in cases like this, if things don't go how you had envisioned or planned, you can still not rest easy, but I know that I couldn't have done a thing different.
Yeah.
I know I didn't cheat on my diet once. I know I would have outworked anyone with my training session. I'm not saying that by any means in an arrogant way, but I just make sure that I leave nothing to chance and nothing on the table.
Yeah, and that showed on the day. I mean, that lineup was most probably the best. Well, it was the best natural lineup I've ever seen in my life, and most probably the best bodybuilding lineup I've ever seen in terms of how good everyone was across the whole lineup. You'll get lineups, even pro shows, and you say, well, those top four are ops and the rest are. But this lineup was so deep, it was so good.
Mm-hmm. And like the whole show was a great experience. I grew a lot from a person. I grew a lot as a person from it. I thought that I presented a really good package. I actually came across some photos the other day just of a couple of nights before when I was training at Doherty's. I did some of my symmetry and that sort of thing, and I was really happy with how I looked. I've never been the biggest on stage really, and that's something that my body type, I know I'm not a mass monster by any means, and I know that I can get conditioned.
Yeah.
So I think I was the most conditioned on stage. I think I was pretty balanced and symmetrical. I need to add some more muscle, and that's something that I know is the case. And coming off the back of the injuries, my off season probably wasn't long enough for me to stay in that surplus to really add some dense muscle. And this is a long-term game where it was really, it was great in those first few years as a teen, as a junior, when you can add a kilo or two a year, even a little bit more when you get in those newbie gains. But now we can work our ass off for a year, for 2 years, and you can come back on stage, 500 grams heavier, 700 grams heavier, and that's good. Sometimes you're even the same weight or a little bit lighter, but you might be better conditioned. So I know it's a chess game, it's patience, and that I want to get bigger, I really do. So hopefully now, if I can have a little bit longer of an off season, that's something that I can do. And hey, it was full credit to the top three. They all look great.
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe it was one of those shows where they went more for size, and this can happen. So after that, I was, to say it adds fuel to the fire is a bit of an understatement. And that's a show that I'm going to come back and I will win one day. I'm very confident in saying that, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I want to keep going until I take that title. More so, not for anyone else's sake, but more so for me to know that, hey, you can get knocked back. It's like that Rocky quote, you can get knocked down 7 times, but if you stand up 8, I think that's where the real win comes from it. So, yeah, I'll definitely back, and by no means has it disheartened me by any means. It's just one of those things, it's a part of the sport. It's a subjective sport. It'd be nice if it was like a running race where it's one person definitively crosses a line before another, but you gotta be prepared for that by choosing this sort of sport, that it is based on a subjective view. So yeah, it's a part and parcel.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. Getting back to that competition and all competitions, you're renowned for your condition. Really, I mean, everyone, as soon as you mention Ben Wortley, everyone knows this is one of the most shredded human beings on earth. Do you do your own prep?
Yeah,
you do.
So I've done my own prep since pretty much day one. There was the first ever comp, which I actually went and saw your Aussie Muscle. I had no idea what I was doing. I was still like, I was just an active teen. You know, I was playing footy, I was racing motocross, I'd go running, I'd do weights. So my condition was pretty good. And I used to be this long distance runner, and I'd do athletics too. Just no muscle really anywhere, but I'd have a six pack. And then by me getting into the gym, I was able to develop that lean muscle. And because I've never been that sort of that mass monster type shape, my gains are generally, even if they're smaller, they tend to be quality. So when it came time to do my first competition, I actually did. You suggested I saw it was Trent from Shape Up with some posing, and he helped me with a peak week. Which at that time, the word peak week, I had no idea what it meant. And then from there, I was actually studying my university degree as well, which was human movement and sports science. So we looked a lot into sports nutrition. And after that first show, which was the '07 SAI MBA titles, which I was in the teenage class, I didn't expect anything of it. And to win I was blown away. And then I thought, right, like, I'm going to really have a crack at this and see what happens if I actually do it properly. So the next year, I had, I guess, what you call your off season, and I signed up at my first commercial gym. Before that, I was just at a little studio in Brighton, and so I had access to a lot more equipment. I started meeting more people in the industry. I met Nick Jones as well, and based on what I was also learning myself, and I would read and I'd read, be it on the internet. I remember that book. I'm sure most bodybuilders have read it, the Arnold Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think so. That's a staple in everyone's house.
I was determined to learn a lot myself, and I'm stubborn in that regard. If I don't know something, I'll do what it takes to learn about it, because I hate to not know, and I hate to be bad at something. So from then on, I pretty much prepped myself, and if I ever had queries, or if I was, I guess, after another opinion and some guidance, I was very fortunate enough to have Nick Jones a phone call away. So even in those earlier comps when I was a junior and a teen, he would definitely keep me on track. And anything I was unsure of, the man's one of the best in the biz. And he is one of the most respected and knowledgeable guys in the industry. I wish there were more guys like him. And he was always in my corner, which I was blessed with. And now, you know, for the past, I don't know how many years it has been, Nick just lets me do my thing, and I'm also, like I was saying, like I'm a little bit headstrong, where if I'm unsure of something, I'll go and do the research, I'll do the due diligence rather than reaching out. And I know he's a busy guy too, so now I just do everything myself, and I feel like I've gotten closer and closer each year to, dare I say, perfecting it. I don't think that word and bodybuilding go hand in hand, because, you know, we will never consider ourselves perfect, be it, you know, body image or our prep. But I feel like I'm getting the hang of it now after all these comps. So yeah, it's something that I really enjoy. And each time I compete, especially peak week and on the day, I will normally try something new. Yeah. Whether it be, you know, a little more salt, or this last season I went, after actually the Melbourne Pro Show, I normally used to, ever since I was a teen, not due to my partying, but I would have a shot or two of vodka before going on stage. And that was something that a few people do, especially bodybuilders. You know, a bit of alcohol brings the veins out, heats you up. You know, all these terms you've probably heard. Yeah. I think it just helps mainly with the confidence. But this year around, I pretty much didn't do that once. I found it, I did it before that Pro Show in Melbourne, and it made me super lightheaded. Yeah. Really, really lightheaded. I was cramping a little bit, so I thought, no, I'm going to try without now. And that's something I probably won't ever do again now. So each time around, I just try and do something a little bit different, and not in a, I guess, an uneducated risk, but more so, you know, you plan it out, you do the research, and in a calculated risk, I would do something like that. Not that it would ever jeopardize myself, but I think where a lot of people go wrong is they try and do massive changes in peak week and expect massive results. At the end of the day, you got to be peeled coming into peak week, whether you like it or not. That's right. You know, peak week is almost like the final little
I always tell people that peak week is improving your physique by, you know, 2 to 3%.
Oh yeah, and if
you do it wrong, you can mess your physique up by 10 to 15%,
Yep.
which I've seen so many times, you know.
100%.
So if you don't know what you're doing, you're better off just cruising into the show and doing nothing.
I think so,
Yeah.
and most people look great a week out.
That's right.
Or
yeah.
a couple of days after.
Yeah.
You know, but
that's such a familiar line in bodybuilding. Wow, you look so good a week before. What happened?
and not only that, but even people try and introduce foods, even if they are, you know, clean, wholesome foods, they'll introduce foods they haven't had for weeks or months.
That's right.
And then you can get that gastric bloating on stage, or just discomfort and feel a bit nauseous on the day. I mean, there's already enough nerves and that sort of thing floating around. The last thing you want to be doing as well is having an upset stomach from what you've ingested. So
yeah.
I think, you know, when it comes to conditioning, it's really, and this I feel happens a bit more with guys and girls, if they have a certain stage weight in their head. Right, I'm going to compete this year at 80.
That's right.
But what happens, Kim, is people start getting towards that 80, you know, they're 80.2 or 80.1, and there's a psychological barrier for a man that he has to cross, that he thinks if he goes into the 79s, he's going to be small. He's going to instantly stop burning body fat, and he'll start burning muscle. Nah, it doesn't work like that.
Quickly then, on that, what did you weigh at the Australian?
Oh, I was about 77, but when I got to the final comp in Boston, November 18th for the WMBF, I weighed in at I think it was like 74.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been that weight for years, like years and years and years. And I had more muscle mass on me, but there was nothing more I could have dropped off me, really. And that was also, it's funny because I was trying to make the lightweight category in the pro men. And normally, I forget what the pound is. I think it's maybe 165. I could be completely wrong, but that's normally the cutoff between lightweight and middleweight. And because I know I'm not going to be the biggest, it would have been more advantageous for me to be in the lightweight category than the middleweight. And anyway, so I basically fasted for about, from water and food from I think the previous night at like 7 p.m. And the weigh-in wasn't until like 1 or whatever it was the next day, 1 p.m. So I was seriously hangry. Like I was ready to eat something. And anyway, I weighed in and I couldn't believe what the scale said. I made the category, but the problem was they had that many athletes enter that they broadened the middleweight class. So I think I was the lightest person in the middleweight class. And there was, I think the difference between me and the heaviest person was like 9.8 kilos. Which if you put 9.8 kilos of chicken breast on a table,
that's a lot.
That's a bit of muscle tissue.
Yeah.
So I got pretty light by the end of it. So that's why now I need to add some more size, and I know I can get the condition. It's through hard work and my knowledge, I believe. I'm knowing different dieting principles and supplementing and vitamins and minerals and things like keeping cortisol levels low and being, I think, wary of your adrenal glands and how much you are overworking them.
Do you advocate cardio in your prep?
I do, but I now only do HIIT cardio, so
Yep.
high intensity interval training. I did it for 4 weeks before ICN State Show, and then I didn't really do it again for the rest of the prep.
Yeah.
So I actually, because I got to the level of condition. ICN State Show for me last year was I wanted to look good, but I didn't want to peak for that one. And then I knew, because as with most competitors, you sort of plan out your plan of attack, your calendar. And I knew that the pro show was 5 weeks after the state show, so I wanted to be looking pretty much on the money for that. So with exception of a few additional classes, like HIIT sessions, and I did a couple of F45 classes as well, I pretty much did my high intensity interval training for that first comp at ICN, which is about 3 to 4 times a week, heavy sleds, a combination of the sleds, ropes. I did heavy farmers, carries. There's these horrid things, I don't know who had the invention of them, they're called like the air assault bikes.
Yeah.
Oh my, I just feel nauseous saying that word, but for those of you guys that haven't tried that, it's basically your arms and legs are going at once. You might have seen CrossFitters do it, and the harder you push, the harder the resistance, because it's fan based. And you do 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. If you're doing that all out 20 seconds, you do that for 10 rounds, and if you aren't green, there's something wrong with you. So I used to chuck that in there as well. And the good thing about that style of training, I put my music on, headphones in, you don't have time to get bored.
Yeah.
There is, like, the intensity is that high, you're either gasping and trying to stop your lungs from jumping out your chest, or you're looking at the time, realizing you're back on in 5 or 10 seconds. You don't have time to get bored. And yes, it is hard, and yes, it will hurt. But I feel like the results are, for me, much better, and for a lot of the clients I've trained, rather than the old school style of, hey, we're going to go for a 45-minute power walk, post weights, or fasted in the morning upon rising. I think now there's more studies and more evidence to support the high intensity interval training. And I like it too. It's more, for me, it's more exciting.
In the end, you have to do what you enjoy. Like, I actually didn't enjoy. I used to do. I incorporated the HIIT at one of my preps, and I didn't like it. Whereas I enjoy going for a 1 hour walk, and I go out and I still, to this day, I walk every day at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
For about an hour. And on weekends I go in the hills and walk, because I enjoy it. So I think you're right. You got to incorporate what you like. Yeah.
And I'm the same. I do love the sort of longer duration cardio, more so for my mindset and to start the day. I think something like that, it gets the blood flowing throughout your body. You do get a bit of an endorphin release, and I'm always more productive if I do something first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And more of a slower, steadier state walk like that, even if I get cranking and get that pace up a little bit, I find more so, be it listening to a podcast or even some music that you like, the mental benefits are huge. So I would still do it in that respect, but like I was saying, my problem being that I find it harder to add muscle than I do to get lean. Well, not that it isn't hard for me to get lean, it still is hard, especially the older I'm getting, but if I do too much of that longer, steadier state stuff, I definitely notice on my physique it can hold me back a little bit in terms of getting thicker.
Yeah.
I guess that term's used pretty loosely, thicker, but I guess that more dense, full look is sacrificed a little bit when I do the longer, steadier state stuff.
Yeah. What's your training principles? Like, what do you advocate to build muscle? So if I was one of your clients, never trained before, what sort of program would you put me onto? Because there's a lot of contention on, especially again, with everything goes back to social media because everyone's on it. But people talk about, no, you need to get stronger to build muscle because it's a bigger muscle that's lifting a bigger weight, or you need to do the slight squeezing and the slow reps and all this. I know me personally, I've again tried everything, but I like lifting heavy stuff. And to me, picking up a 10 kilo dumbbell and trying to make it feel 20 kilos is pointless. Why not just pick up a 20 kilo dumbbell? But what works for Ben Wortley to build muscle? What's your training philosophy that you apply to yourself, to your physique?
This is a really good question, and we could probably talk for a whole podcast on this.
Yeah, I could imagine.
In a nutshell, my training has changed over the years. And I think that's more so to do with the injuries that I've worked around.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
And I by no means advocate lifting lighter. I think, at the end of the day, it is bodybuilding. And to build muscle, you do need a relatively high stimulus and a high intensity or a high percentage of 1 RM lifted to stimulate those adaptations, responses for the muscle to come back bigger and stronger. Now, first things I always prioritize is technique. Technique and form first. If you nail those two things, hey, go heavy. I think where a lot of people go wrong is they have too much focus on the weight and the number lifted that their technique goes out the window. Not so much from an injury perspective, but hey, you could have two people benching 100 kilos and just based on the way they lift that bar and lift the weight, it could have, I guess, in terms of muscle fiber percentage recruitment of delts versus pec versus triceps, you could have two different completely data points on a graph if you were to put an EMG on and watch how their muscles fire. So I think definitely getting the technique down pat first is a priority, be it for a first time lifter, even for a guy that's been lifting for 10 years. I think the guy that's been lifting for 10 years doesn't have to think as much about the technique because it's ingrained in him though. It's like that neural pattern has been practiced so many times that we pretty much have it perfected and we can do without thinking too much. So you don't necessarily think about, all right, I am squeezing the pec, I am driving this elbow across my body and that sort of thing. So I think where people, nowadays unfortunately people take a little bit of knowledge and they sort of run with it, you know what I mean? You hear these people practice squeezing and time under tension, and what people forget is that, hey, it still needs to be enough stimulus in terms of weight lifted, but people can go off on these tangents and think, right, I need to go right back to a 10 kilo to feel and squeeze. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
They take it a little bit too far.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in the gym as well myself, like guys that, they might be doing their 5-second concentric part of the rep. Hey, that's all well and great, but if you're doing that with a 7.5 kilo, I guarantee you could probably still do it with a 20 kilo.
That's right.
But they kind of take the truth and run with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it can get misconstrued. And this is the problem with, I guess, social media and that sort of thing, is that the messages can get a little bit misguided.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I like to train with a lot of time under tension. Technique first. I still always go as heavy as I can.
Yeah.
For sure. But there's some lifts that suit me for heavier movements, and there's some lifts that suit me where I'm probably better off with a bit more of a moderate weight and slightly more volume. I think at the end of the day, progressive overload is still king.
That's
so
right.
You have to subject the body to something that it is not used to shock it, and then to, I guess, force it to adapt and become bigger, stronger, more endurance, whatever it may be. So whether it's, I think for bodybuilders and strength training athletes, mainly that's progressive overload in terms of increasing weight. But hey, some days you might go in the gym and you cannot just go up in weight.
No.
So on that sort of day, you might try and get your 100 kilo bench rather than going up to 110. You might try and get your 100 kilo bench for another rep or two. Or you might shorten the rest breaks so you're doing a little bit more fatigued. Or you might do an extra set of it so you've upped your volume of the session. Yeah. So I think it's important every time you step foot in the gym, your goal should be to do something slightly different or slightly better than your previous week's efforts.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, that's still what it comes back to. And so that's what
I always like to use an example is, I agree. I think you should strive to get stronger. But I think a lot of people misunderstand that, and they think that you have to do single reps every workout. You don't. You can get stronger if you've lifted the same weight for 20 reps and the next time you do it for 24 reps. As far as I'm concerned, that's progressive overload.
Yes,
You've gotten stronger. Yeah. The thing is, I think a lot of people, they don't even realise in the gym how strong they are. In my gym, I was working there the other day, and there was a guy there who comes in all the time, and I watch him, and he does the same thing all the time. And I went to him on this exercise, and I grabbed the pin and I dropped it down, 3 or 4 spots. And he's going, "What are you doing?" I'm going, "Do that weight." He said, "I can't do that weight." I'm there, "Yes, you can." I said, "You've been coming here for 3 years. If you can't do that weight, you're wasting your time." Mm-hmm. And he picked it up and he did it. He did it for 10 without me even touching it. And he goes, "Shit, I didn't even realise." And I'm there, "That's because you hadn't even tried. I watch you train and you don't even try to go. You put the same weight on everything every time you come in."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you do your 6 to 8 or 10 or whatever reps it is. And after that, this was a few months ago, and this guy is now benching, he was benching 80 kilos. That's all he went up to. And the other day he did 115 for 3 or something.
Wow.
I just pushed him to just try and train harder. And then we spoke about the progressive overload and trying to lift more weight. And and he says it's totally reinvigorated his training as well.
Firstly, good on you for doing that. And I've done the same with some, probably more so my mates than just people I don't know in the gym as such. I'm not just going to go see Billy on the bench that I don't know and chuck an extra 20 each side. But I think that definitely we can all get caught in our comfort zones.
That's
and what's, I guess, we're used to. We can be creatures of habit. And sometimes the mental plateau is just as strong as the physical plateau.
Exactly right.
And the mind is stronger than we think it is. So we got to learn to use that muscle and that tool to be on our side rather than against us. So instantly, when you said to him, "You can do that," and he said, "Oh, no, but I can't." He already doubted himself. Whereas, a bit of self-belief, you'd be amazed at what you can lift.
Yeah.
See, it's funny you say that. I'm quite often on the other end of the spectrum. What I think I can lift and what my body can lift are two different things, which is why
I'll do the same.
You see me caught under a squat rack every now and then, or caught on the leg press or whatever it might be. So, I think definitely we are, especially in the right frame of mind, we are a lot stronger than we think we are.
Yeah.
Particularly women as well. I
exactly
trained some strong women. Yeah. and a lot of my female clients would out-train many of my men on legs. I don't know what it is, if it's the way women are like engineered and constructed to have less nerve endings in their lower body. I don't know what it is, if that's for
my
pregnancy
wife
or
is
what.
the same. She's
but
a beast on legs.
Oh,
And my wife is 51 years old, and we got her, and she pulled 145 kilo deadlift.
wow.
And I looked it up, and I'm there. That's an Australian record. I said we should put you on a proper program and everything. She goes, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
that
it's like
is,
I'm looking at her, why wouldn't you? Oh
That's
my
awesome.
God! Like
at least you
this
pick up
is a
those grocery
big
bags,
deal.
no worries. Yeah, it's functional training.
That's
but no,
right.
I think yeah, for sure. And the women, that some of their mindsets, mate, they are incredible. I have had more guys look at me with like tears in their eyes and complaining on leg extensions than I have any female client, mate. They are tough.
Yeah.
Especially on the lower body stuff. I don't know if it's just that they don't like to quit or what it might be, but the females, mate, on the leg training days, they kill it. So
That's right.
Good on your wife for doing that as well. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, no, she did her weight training for a little while, but she does F45 now. She goes,
Yep.
I prefer that. And in the end, you do what you like to do.
Yeah,
You know? And
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
want to push her.
If you like something, you will stick at it.
But
It's
I
the same.
sent that video of her pulling 145 to a couple of powerlifting coaches, and they all said, bring her to me, please.
That's awesome.
You know? But
Oh,
she's
good on her.
just not interested, you know?
Yeah. Just turns out she can deadlift like a boss.
That's right. Exactly right. You travelled last year overseas. You went by yourself, didn't you? And you
Yeah.
competed.
Yeah, so that was
That would be hard, wouldn't it? Would it be hard?
It was
like rocking
it
up at a
was
show by
really
yourself. Did
good
you rock up
and-
at a show by
Oh,
yourself?
I've got some stories. Yeah, I've got some stories, but I'm so glad I did that, and I'm quite an extroverted person, and I think you do stuff like this, and it's important to test yourself outside your comfort zone every now and then. And even my dad was like, no, I'll come over with you. I'll come over. And I said, no, I want to do this myself. And I said, I really respect and appreciate the thought of you and the offering of you to come with him. But I said, I'll do this myself. And for those of you guys listening that have competed, you know how good it can be to have that sort of solitary time by yourself as well, where you can just, you need that downtime after training just to be in, I guess, stay focused and be in your own thoughts and to relax. And I love nothing more than after a big training session, come home, like music on, by myself, not having to talk to anyone. I cook my dinner and I really try and relax. And for me, I enjoy that. Whereas if there was two of you traveling and competing, particularly if one of those people isn't stepping on stage and you're there prepping your chicken breast with your broccoli, not to sound bro science, but just for an example, but and they're there, they might be going out and getting their burger or whatever. There's little things like that could make the travels a little bit harder. So I wanted to do this solo for a couple of reasons, and one of them was, I guess, a bit of self-development, and I loved it, mate. It was great. There were definitely a few things I could have planned better. For example, the Miami show was Saturday morning.
So what show was that?
That was called DFAC,
Yeah.
which stands for Drug Free Athlete Coalition. Now, there was a guy called Chevron Cunningham who competes with the WMBF, an awesome American guy, and I follow him on social media. We're friends, and I saw he competed in this show which had this kind of, I guess you could describe it as purple lighting, and it looked really great. And I saw the stage photos, and I started to look up the competition and the athletes and the caliber of the athletes in it. And there was a few things that really stood out to me. Like, the lighting was great. I liked their philosophy and their principles. You could be from any federation and they would accept you. It was, what they wanted to do was put a show on in America of like the best of the best, basically,
Yeah.
where it was an unbiased panel, and it was just, you could be from any background as long as I think the criteria was as long as you'd won an overall state show for a natural competition, you could enter. So that was where I saw about this competition, and I thought, hey, it's in Miami too, which is a pretty cool place to compete. So that was my first stop, and when I was at home booking my airfares in Australia, I saw there was a flight from LA to Miami, and it left LA at, I think, 11:30 at night and got into Miami at 6 a.m. in the morning. And I thought, oh, perfect, because I was doing this trip solo, I was, trying to keep within a bit of a budget. I thought I wouldn't even have to get accommodation that night. I could sleep on the plane. Well, I didn't really read the fine print of the flight. The first flight was from LA, I think, to maybe like Orlando or something. I was stuck between two probably 140 kilo guys that were sneezing on me all flight. I didn't get a wink of sleep. I think that first flight was about 3 or 4 hours. And then it was like a 3-hour layover in this airport where nothing was shut. I ran out of meals, so I was hungry. I hadn't slept. Then got on the next plane to Miami. Long story short, I got into Miami at, I think it was 6:30 a.m. I'm on my phone, I'm Googling, like trying to find some places that would be open to go get some food to eat. I end up finding a Whole Foods, which is a chain in America, which is like, how would you describe it? It's like a really big supermarket, but all sort of kind of that hipster organic health food style. And they have these, I guess you'd call them an exotic salad bar, where you can actually get chicken breast or, you know, any vegetable you want, and you can weigh them and eat really clean. So obviously you got scales there too, so you can get your measurements. Anyway, that was shut too. So that morning I had to go over straight to the registration and do a lie detector test, register, enter, all that jazz. And I basically did this off probably like an hour's sleep, and I hadn't eaten. So I was like malnourished and delirious to say the least. Then after I finally completed all that, it was about lunchtime. I thought, thank God I can go to my Airbnb. I'll be able to check in, cook some food, have a sleep, get ready to train. I didn't see on my Airbnb, it wasn't available until 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So then I was basically on the streets of Miami, like this tanned, bronze-looking lost tourist. So there was definitely a few events that occurred on the trip that I guess tested me as a person.
Yeah.
But they are also where I think you grow the most as well, and it's challenges like that you overcome, and they make the trip more memorable. So the whole trip was an awesome experience. That first show went really well. I managed to win my class, which is a middleweight men, I should say. Then went on to win the overall, which then they announced me the pro card. So that was with the DFAC, which I really enjoyed my experience, and I definitely look forward to competing with them again. That night, being I was the only Australian there, I literally knew no one except Chevron, who was the American guy. I was the only Australian there, and so even when it came time to tanning up, I ran into a bit of a hurdle where I was already, I think I was going on in about an hour. Had my tubs of Dream Tan, you know, it's what we all use. It's been around since my first comp, and I haven't used anything else. Went to start tanning up by myself with my little paint roller from Bunnings, and they said, oh no, Dream Tan's banned. And I'm thinking, like, I'm on in an hour. She's like, oh, everyone did their tans yesterday and today. The event was basically sponsored by a tanning company that they do it for you, kind of like how we do it at ICN now. Yeah. And so she's looked at me, I've looked at her, and I'm thinking, like, here I am, I look like Casper the Ghost. How am I going to be able to do this without Dream Tan? They didn't have the machine there to tan anyone up. And then she spoke to one of the other ladies that was backstage, and they said, listen, okay, we understand it's your first company, you're by yourself, you're Australian. If you go into the bathrooms, we'll let you Dream Tan. Just do not put it on the walls. Yep. So I ended up being able to use that. I had my paint roller. There was some really nice British people there. They helped me as well. And so I managed to get on stage with the right tan. I was lucky, but at least I know now for next time. And that night, the whole British team, they took me under their wing. They offered me to go out for dinner with them. So I went out for dinner, and I made a lot of friends from that competition. Everyone was super friendly. And this is what I love so much about competing is your network gets bigger, you are surrounded by like-minded individuals, and I think it's a sport that can really bring people together because you know what they've been through and they know what you've been through. Like it's no easy journey, so instantly you have, I guess, a lot of similarities, and there's an underlying respect for each other, even just to be there on the day. Placings aside, you both know that you've worked your ass off. So I've come away with some really close friends from that competition. I then had 2 weeks between that comp and the WMBF in Boston. So I pretty much went to California, and I was road tripping around California, going to the best bodybuilding gyms there were. So it was like a pub crawl, but with gyms. Yeah. So it was quite the opposite.
During comp prep.
Yeah, it was quite the opposite to some of my other holidays I've done, and it was amazing, mate. Some of the gyms in America are like, they are fantastic. It's it's kind of ironic that how high obesity is over there with some of the access to the gyms they have, but in saying that too, food costs over there, you can get like a full family meal, like a family feast meal from one of these takeout joints for probably like $10, but you go into a Whole Foods And for organic chicken breast and that sort of thing, mate, I almost had to take a loan out for my first food prep shop there. So it's a beautiful country, America. I love it, and I think the fitness scene is huge over there, and the gyms and everything like that are great. I love being back home though, and that's one thing that travel has taught me, is even a place like Adelaide, we are so lucky to be living here. It's a good little city. So I'm proud every time I get to say, you know, when they read your name out and they say from Adelaide, Australia, like I'm proud as punch to be from this town. And I think still to this day, and this is by no means for brownie points, but some of my most fond memories and the best running shows I've competed in have been run by yourself here right in Adelaide. And I still get that same feeling every time I walk into Norwood Town Hall, be it to judge a competition, be it to support my athletes, be it to compete. I still get that same nostalgic feeling from my first couple of comps, and that'll be with me for life now. Even when I drive down the parade, I get this weird feeling in my stomach. So
yeah, I'm the same. With our show now only 3 weeks away, like that the day we walk into the venue to set up, it's always exciting.
There's no place like home. Yeah. There's no place
so
like
how
home.
Did you go in this WMBF show?
WMBF, so that was the one where I was in the pro class, and there was, how many, I think there was, don't quote me, 42 or 46 pros over the three categories, and I got smack bang in the middleweight category, which is often, in most competitions, the middleweight normally wins the overall as well. So we got up there, really interesting show. So split show format where you have the morning, I guess your compulsories and symmetry.
So pre-judging and
pre-judging, then the night show.
Okay.
Now the pre-judging was interesting. There was, I think my class might have had like 20, and when we're all pumping up backstage, like some of these African American dudes are seriously jacked. Like to think that they weighed in the same class as me, like there was a 10 kilo difference from lightest to heaviest, but some of these guys, like their bones must be made of broomsticks. The density that they have, they look like these action figure dolls. And when I'm pumped and when I flex, you can have that kind of, that look where one muscle goes from another. It's kind of that, you know, ballooned type look, but when you're not flexed, that goes straight away. These guys walk around like that 24/7. Like the difference between them relaxed and flexed, I don't think is as noticeable. Anyhow, we've got up there, they've got us all out in this line, and as you know, when you've got 20 odd people trying to compete and do your symmetry, there's elbows banging, and for the judges, they don't really get a good chance to see everyone. So they split it in half. Anyway, they split it in the halves, and then we did quite a few rounds, and it looked like what they appeared to call out, say, top 10 or 12, and I was in that lineup, and I was sort of on the, you know, I guess 2/3 of the way around the outside of the line on the front, and then they said quarter turn. We went to, obviously we turned to our right, then we turned to the rear, and then they swapped us around, and I think obviously that was where my condition showed, through the glutes and through the back as well, and then I was sort of put closer to the center, that's always a good feeling when your number gets called out, and you know, competitor 16 swap with 27 and you're getting close to that midline. It's a good feeling. So went through all the symmetry, and then the compulsories was really weird, something I've never experienced before. I would have thought they would have done the standard sort of like front lat, front double bi, side chest, side try, etc, etc. They were calling them out quite randomly, so it was almost like, all right, front double bicep, relax, side chest, relax, face rear double bicep.
Oh, right.
And then they would call us back to the front, and then they'd be like side chest but right hand side. And so I'm not sure what they were really looking for, but two of my favourite poses and probably best poses we didn't even hit. There was no rear lat spread, and we're up there for over 30 minutes. There was not one rear lat spread.
That's crazy.
And not one abdominal and thigh.
Oh, really?
Not one. So two of probably my strongest poses they didn't include, which, hey, that's life, you know. And then obviously you have your little pose down. That in between the two, the morning and the night show, I made friends with quite a few of the other athletes, and there was a few sort of top natural bodybuilder guys from Instagram that I got to meet over there, and they were really good people, you know. And that's where I think social media can be a good thing. It can connect people, and so that was really, like, it was a good experience, an enjoyable day. We then came back night show, I did my routine, which, you know, I always try and make it a little bit fun. So I did a bit of twerking in there, and there's quite a few African American ladies in the audience that they gave me a standing ovation, which I was pretty pumped with. And then they called out, they gave placings in this comp to top 6.
Yeah.
So they announced the top 6. I was lucky enough to be in the top 6. And then they start sort of ticking them off the list. 6th place goes to, 5th place goes to, and I thought, oh, right, this is good. I still haven't been called out because, to be honest, Kim, I was excited to be in top 6. Like, that was a blitz lineup. I haven't seen a natural lineup like this before, and I just, you know, it was good to know that everyone had to do a polygraph test. And hey, that's still debatable. I know people say, oh, you can cheat your way around that too. No matter what you say, mate, you can be a lifetime natural. Say you've done every drug test under the world. There's still going to be a skeptical person that says, oh, but you can do this to get around that. Right. But anyhow, these guys, they all passed. And then I got announced in 4th, which I was really wrapped with. But at the same time, to know I was that close to 3rd, and there was prize money up to 3rd, I was kind of like, I was stoked, but then at the same time, I was kind of a little bit bummed. Then they announced the top 3, and the guy who won, he was an African Frenchman, and mate, this guy was like a silverback gorilla. He was dense, and I was significantly leaner than him, but his density and just the thickness of his shape was phenomenal, mate.
Yeah.
And credit where credit's due, like, unbelievable athlete. And I think all in all, it was a great experience for me. I love the show, and to finish off the season like that, it was just, my body was tired, my mind was tired. I was ready for a break. So it was good, mate. But it's lit the fire, and I've got new goals now, and one of those is to go back next time and nothing less than a top 3. So from here, you go back to the drawing board, you work out the plan of attack, and you start chipping away day in, day out. You just start working towards the next one. So whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whether it's 2 years, that I haven't completely decided. Yeah. I just want to be injury free, and I'm more about longevity now too, and long-term health. And I love training so much. I still want to be doing this when I'm your age. And by no means am I saying you're a mature age athlete or anything like that.
I love training. I still love training. It's the highlight of my week.
Yep.
When I get to train.
I think that's the most important thing. And what you said there resonates with me, because during comp, during the, you know, when you get to that level of conditioning, I was getting to the stage where training was a highlight of my day. I was getting to the stage where it was hard, man. It was tough, and I would seriously need to amp up for training. It was something that I started to, I won't say not enjoy, but it certainly didn't have me bounding up the stairs with a smile on my face like I do nowadays to get in there and lift. So I'm back now, enjoying lifting, enjoying training, enjoying life, most importantly, giving back time to those that I didn't get to see as much in the last 6 months. You know, I'm blessed to have the most supporting family and friends around. And so for me, it's now about, I guess, giving back a little bit and giving my time to other areas of my life. Training is still always, as soon as I step foot in the gym, I'm going 110%, but I still know now how to dedicate and allocate my time outside the walls of the gym, which is something I've learned over the years. And that's something I can confidently say, and I'm proud of myself to be able to be in a position now where I feel like my balance is pretty much on point. And I think that's something that's very important for the longevity of the sport. Yeah. And I'm not chucking in the chunks anytime soon. Like, I know what I want to look like in my head. And I know it's one of those things we all will probably get close to that and think, no, but I still need a bigger chest, or I still need bigger this. It's something we'll probably never be completely satisfied, but I think we can still be happy with our shape and happy with how far we've come. And so I've got big visions still, and I'm definitely not done, but it's now the long-term game. So I've got to think a bit smarter about it, training and life and so forth.
That's awesome. Well, before we wrap up, we're here at the Adelaide Performance and Fitness Centre on Marion Road. This is your home. This is where you're based in terms of training clients? Yeah,
I'm lucky enough to call this my home. So I've been on board here for the last few months. And, mate, it is one hell of a playground here. I'm
it's
sure
an awesome gym, yeah.
Anyone that wants to come check it out, you're more than welcome to. We're on Marion Road, just near Harvey Norman. $5 casuals for anyone. We've got... The thing I love about this gym is my mum and dad train here. And then we have some big heavy lifting dudes train here too. But no one is intimidated. Like, there is my mum and dad say say g'day to some of the biggest, scariest looking characters in here. But it's more so everyone knows that they are in here for the same reason, to be better. And you can be on the sled track pushing heavy sleds, or you can be a bodybuilder, lifting the 50s, or whatever your training focus may be. The concept of this place is to try and bring people together and allow you to achieve your goals, to have the tools at hand to be able to, take your training to that next level. So I love working out of here, and it can be tough sometimes working where you train as well. But this place here, it's awesome. If anything, it makes me train even more, because if I'm feeling a slight slump in my paperwork or when I'm doing my emails, sometimes I'll duck off and do a bit of a mini session in addition to my larger session later on. So I love it here. So it's a really good little family down here, and I'm blessed to be a part of it.
Awesome. Anybody else you want to thank?
We didn't get a chance to touch on Nick Jones, but
no.
I know that was something I did want to talk about. Obviously, Nick Jones, everyone listening would know who he is. He's an absolute gentleman of the industry. He's one of the OGs. He's been around the scene for a number of years. And the thing I commend Nick on and I like most about him is that anyone you speak to cannot say a bad word about the guy.
No.
They can't speak highly enough of him. And for me to have a role model like that has made a massive impact on my I guess you could say career in this industry. And I'll never forget from the day that he gave me that first Gentech visor out the back of his car at Fitness First at Marion. I used to wear this Gentech visor, and he also gave me his DVD. I just used to look at this guy and think, man, that guy's made it. Like, that's what I want to be like one day. And what better role model really to aim for? He's been with me since he got me on board in 08, and so it's 10-year anniversary. And I think the thing with Nick and I is just that the friendship has just blossomed over the years, and unfortunately with my social media I should be posting more. Admittedly, I'm sorry guys, I really should be, and anyone who knows me, anyone who asks me knows it's all I use is Gentech. And I love the stuff, I really do. And to be a part of that team has been, like, I can honestly say it's been one of the best things, not just from a training perspective and a supplement perspective. All that aside, it's more so the family feel and I guess even between athletes, we all are very like-minded. We all get along great, and the whole team, they're just awesome. Everyone is trying their best to be the best. Be it Biggie and strongman. We've got Sue Metcalf. She's doing strongman and bodybuilding as well. A lot of us other guys, Justin, Nathan, Tim, myself, we're in the natural bodybuilding scene. We are all trying to, I guess, just improve and represent not only, I guess, the best version of ourselves, but also represent a brand that we actually believe in.
It just shows you the influence Nick Jones has on all of you guys, because you guys have all been with Gentech for years. You see other supplement companies and their sponsored athletes just change non-stop. Every few months it's new sponsored athletes, and even I see all these Instagram people, and 1 week they're sponsored by one company and next week it's another one. They'll swap for $5 they'll swap, And when I did my last podcast with Biggie, we said the same thing, that Biggie has shown that loyalty to Nick and Gentech, and you've done the same.
Yeah, Joel Mintis, I think, would probably be with Gentech for 15
That's
years.
Right. And all of you people, Sue, you've all been with Nick for years, and it just shows you that one, you like the products, obviously, but the support you get from Nick must be just
and the friendship that him and I have, and the way he's been that role model for me is, like I said, that I don't honestly think I would be where I am now if I didn't have someone like that to look up to. And I mean that in a good way. Like, I've always, ever since I was a kid, in sport, athletics, whatever it might be, pushed myself as far as I could go, because I just want to find out what my potential is. And sometimes you've got to push the boundaries to find it out. But in terms of, like, I guess being someone, it's same as Nick. Nick doesn't have a huge social media following.
No.
But he's the real deal. Like, he's the most authentic, nice guy you will meet. And that's just evident as soon as someone, mentions his name, or each year when we're walking into the Arnold's to set up the booth, it takes us probably 25-30 minutes to walk a couple hundred meters into the expo, because everyone stops and knows him and wants to have a chat or just even say good day to the guy. He is seriously the definition of a legend. So I can't thank Nick enough for all these years. And for anyone that wants a role model, he's, what better man to look up to, really. He's been there, he's done that, he walks the walk, he talks the talk, and just an all-round, absolutely amazing guy.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Man Crush Monday, even though we're recording on a Wednesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah, what are we, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Tuesday,
yeah. Easter.
The Easter weekend throws everything out. Well, terrific. Thanks so much, Ben. This was a great chat here at the Adelaide Performance and Fitness Centre. Obviously, people can get in contact with you via social media.
Yeah, via social media, like you said, my response time isn't the best, but I try and not be on there too much, to be honest, because it can distract us from, living life, Before you know it, you can scroll for half an hour on that feed, and really you haven't, you haven't got any better in life, have you? Right. So, feel free to reach out to me on social media. I always do get back to people. It might be a little bit of a delay, and honestly, guys, just keep doing you, being you, and set your goals high. Don't let nothing hold you back. And I think it's important to keep the authenticity and honesty in this industry. So let's keep natural bodybuilding on the way up and keep supporting Kim's shows, and let's really try and see how far we can take the sport. Who knows? One day it might even get a little bit of airtime on TV or something. Right. I don't know. But I'm excited for the future. I am, and thanks a lot for having me on the podcast. I love to have a good chin wag, and sometimes I can talk a little bit too much. So hey, in future episodes, if we want to go again, you're more than welcome to come on
it makes
down.
my job easier when you do the talking.
Cool. But, thanks very much, and I really appreciate you having me on the show.
No, thank you very much, Ben. And that's it for episode 3, guys. Check us out. Don't forget to like and to share, and leave a review. That always helps us get up the standings. So keep an eye out. In future episodes coming up, we've got some great South Australian and some national and international guests coming up. So thanks again, and we'll catch you guys next time.